On Saturday, April 12, 1980, Samuel Kanyondo led an attack by a group of Crown soldiers on the Liberian Executive Mansion, killing President William Tolbert in a military coup d'etat. Like other indigenous Liberians, Samuel Doe resented the power and privileges granted the Americo-Liberians, the descendants of freed American slaves who founded the colony of Liberia in 1821. But after taking over power, Doe went on to establish a reputation for cruelty and repression, and would become the first world leader to be tortured and violently murdered by rebel forces while being recorded on camera. In this edition on History Media, we revisit the story of the torture and violent execution of Samuel Kanyondo of Liberia in 1990. Please come with me. Samuel Kanyondo was born on May 6, 1951 in Tozon in Grand Gede County in Liberia. He belonged to the Crown tribe, which is one of the 16 major tribal groups in Liberia. Doe attended primary school in Tozon and was later a student at the R.B. Richardson Baptist Junior High School in Zwedru, the capital of Grand Gede County. But he would drop out of high school in 1967 for economic reasons. And 2 years later, after leaving high school, Doe joined the Liberian Army. Samuel Kanyondo had his initial military training at the John H. Topman Military Camp in Todi, Misrato County, and at Camp Shefflin in the same county. In 1970, he was assigned to the 3rd Battalion of the Liberian Armed Forces at Barclays Training Center in Monrovia. His quest for knowledge pushed him to continue his high school education at Barracks Union School at Marcus Garvey Memorial High School. He also studied at the Radio and Communication Schools of the Ministry of Defense, and in 1971 was awarded Advanced Diploma with honors. Samuel Doe would have a remarkable military career. Doe moved swiftly through the ranks of the military. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to History Media if you have not done so already. Thank you. In 1973, he was appointed acting first sergeant in command of 150 men, and 2 years later was promoted to corporal and shortly after to first sergeant. While in the Liberian National Guard, he gained a reputation as an agile combat fighter and an able sharpshooter. Because of this, he was selected in 1979 for training by the United States Special Forces in Monrovia. On successful completion of this training, Doe was appointed adjutant in charge of administration in the 3rd Battalion at Barclays Training Center. Later in 1979, he was promoted to the rank of Master Sergeant. During this period, Samuel Doe was primarily concerned about his professional career in the military and was not interested in politics. He also dismissed insinuation that his career in the armed forces would be hindered by the fact that the highest positions traditionally went to Americo-Liberians, the descendants of freed American slaves who founded the Republic in 1847. But while his indigenous colleagues held this view, Doe had his own plans. In the early hours of April 12, 1980, a small group of soldiers from the 1st Brigade of the National Guard, led by Samuel Doe, staged a military coup d'etat. The soldiers, mostly from the Crown tribe, stormed the executive mansion and killed President William R. Tolbert. At first, the coup gained popular acceptance immediately, and Doe adopted the revolutionary slogan, "In the cause of the people, the struggle continues." A People's Redemption Council (PRC) consisting of 17 appointed men headed by Samuel Doe was established. To run the government effectively, a cabinet of 19 members was also set up, which was made up of soldiers and civilians who were mostly from the PPP and Moja, although there was a few from the True Whig Party as well. Shortly after the coup, the PRC imposed a price freeze on all commodities including imported goods, doubled the salaries of civil servants and military personnel, and ordered the public execution of 13 prominent officials of Tolbert's regime. Interestingly, the early years of the Doe regime seemed promising. In 1981, he promoted himself to the rank of general and became commander-in-chief of the armed forces. The following year, he received an honorary PhD from the National University of Seoul. Like most African dictators, Do promised the people that he would return the country to civilian rule, and true to his words, he initiated reforms along those lines. In 1984, a new constitution created by a constitutional commission was approved by the Liberian people in a referendum. The new constitution provided for a dissolution of the PRC and the creation of an interim National Assembly. In the same year, Doe declared his candidacy for the presidency and founded the National Democratic Party of Liberia, NDPL. On October 15, 1985, Samuel Doe was re-elected as president of Liberia, defeating his closest rival, Jackson F. Doe of the Liberian Action Party. Please note that Jackson F. Doe was not a relation of Doe at all. The election was heavily criticized as Doe took the ballot to a private location where they were counted by a team of 50 people he had handpicked. He was also accused of masterminding the assassination of around 50 political opponents prior to the election. Doe was sworn in as president on January 6, 1986. But before this time, Doe had become increasingly repressive. On November 12, 1985, General Thomas Kwiyonkwupa, who led the 1980 coup along with Doe, attempted to seize power. But the coup attempt failed and Kwiyonkwupa was killed in the process in Monrovia. Following the attempted coup, however, Doe's corrupt and authoritarian regime grew even more repressive, closing down media houses and prohibiting political activities. Abuse by the government against specific ethnic groups, notably the Jio and the Mano peoples in the north, created division and violence among indigenous people that had previously coexisted peacefully. These continuous abuses and violence created a fertile ground for the brutal civil war that followed. On December 24, 1989, Charles Taylor, a former Doe supporter, invaded Liberia from Ivory Coast to wage a guerrilla warfare against the Doe's regime. Taylor had escaped from jail in the United States, where he was awaiting extradition to Liberia on corruption allegations. The conflict immediately escalated into a full-blown civil war, and by the mid-1990s, rebel groups controlled the majority of Liberia. On July 29, 1990, over 600 citizens were slaughtered at a church in Monrovia, St. Cordy Street. The massacre was carried out by about 30 government soldiers loyal to President Samuel Doe. The perpetrators were from the Kran tribe of Doe, while most of the victims were from the Jio and the Mano tribes who supported the rebels. But in the mid-morning hours of September 9, 1990, Samuel Doe made the greatest mistake of his career. On September 9, 1990, Doe was captured in Monrovia by Prince Dwight Johnson, leader of the INPFL, a breakaway faction of Taylor's NPFL. President Samuel Doe had been invited to the ECOMOG headquarters for a meeting by the head of ECOMOG mission in Liberia, General Kino, and was guaranteed of his safety from the rebel forces. On the morning of September 9, 1990, Doe arrived at a crucial point when the change of guards from the well-armed and better-equipped Nigerian team to the weaker Gambian contingents was well underway. When Doe's convoy of lightly armed soldiers arrived, the Nigerian team had barely left the location. Doe was led to General Kino's office, where he was properly welcomed. However, majority of his team of aides and security guards were waiting outside. While inside with the ECOMOG commander, Doe began to hear shootings from outside. Rebel forces had stormed the headquarters and began to shoot Doe's crew individually and subsequently in groups. Immediately, President Samuel Doe expressed his concerns to Quino, but was still assured of his safety. However, Quino eventually excused him to check what was going on outside and was followed immediately by his assistant, Captain Coker of the Gambian contingent. Meanwhile, after analyzing the situation, both men took cover. At this time, Johnson's men rushed inside, finished off Doe's surviving crew, shot him in the leg, and abducted him. When the dust finally settled, almost 80 of those men were dead. Captain Coker would describe the encounter as a brutal massacre rather than a battle. Surprisingly though, no ECOMOG soldiers were injured in the chaos. Doe would now face the most brutal torture he had ever witnessed in his life. President Samuel Doe was taken to Prince Johnson's military base. Meanwhile, to prove that he was not protected by black magic, Johnson ordered his ear to be cut off while drinking beer. As you will see in the recording, though too gruesome to show here, Doe's legs were in shackles and a strange thing was wrapped around his glands. At the end of the video, Doe was forced to stand and had part of his fingers and toes amputated, as well as an attempt to amputate his middle finger. After 12 hours of torture at the hands of Prince Johnson, Doe was finally murdered. His corpse was left naked on the streets of Monrovia with his head shaved with cigarette burns. Doe's body was later exhumed and reburied. Now, in November 2000, Doe's son Samuel Canyon Doe Jr. attended a religious gathering representing the Doe family. President Doe's widow mother, Nancy, said at a press conference that she harbored hatred and resentment towards a specific person over the past decade and had thought of revenge against her husband's murder. But the two were reconciled at the hands of the Nigerian Reverend T.B. Joshua. And to fully understand how President Laurent Desire Kabila of the DRC was assassinated by his own former child soldier, please click this video here. And for more interesting African stories, consider subscribing to Hisprul Media and on the bell notification as well. And I will see you in the next video. Thank you very much for watching. Peace.